Welcome to Michael's Record Collection. I'm very happy to have with me today Dec Burke. Just got a new album out called Life in Two Dimensions. Came out September 24th on Gravity Dream Music. And Dec, thanks for your time today.
That's a pleasure, Michael. Thanks for having me along, mate.
So this is your fourth solo album. Came out with Destroy All Monsters in 2010,
Yeah.
Paradigms and Storylines the next year, and then Book of Secrets in 2016.
Yeah.
First in a few years. Um, You are a guy who is, I think, known in at least in progressive rock circles for your guitar work, but rumor has it you started out as a keyboard player.
Yeah, that's very true. Well, early years, I grew up in Ireland before we moved to the UK. Musical family. Mum and dad played in the Irish show bands.
Hmm.
So we had a piano in the house, and my grandparents, they had a piano in the house, and they were all that side of the family were very musical. So as a kid, I was just like pound on it and make a racket and whatever. But as the years went by, I just started to pick it up and play it. And my dad had a keyboard in the house because he was playing with a band for a period of time, and he did a little bit of keyboard playing. And I just latched onto it and loved it. And it was the '80s, and I loved all of that music. And but the transition really was I was in a record shop in Limerick, where I'm from in Ireland, and they had this section where they had damaged covers. So it was just in the white inner sleeve.
Hmm.
And in there, it had this record and it said Van Halen. And I thought, jump, I'll get that. But I got it home and it was the first Van Halen album. So very not jump.
Not jump.
Not jump. And I put it on and it just blew my mind. And I thought, what is this? And I couldn't believe this was a guitar making these noises. And I thought, forget the keyboards. I want to do this. So I worked all summer, saved up my money, bought a guitar for £60, and taught myself. Just sat in front of the record player, and my dad was like, "I can show you how to play some chords." I go, "No, I'm doing this myself." Yeah, and that's how it all kicked off.
How old were you when you moved from Ireland to England?
89, so I was 17.
Okay.
17, yeah, yeah.
So you say you grew up in a theatrical family, a musical family. What was the first sort of pop rock that you became aware of as a kid?
Uh, in the house, well, my mum was really big on buying records. So her particular taste was ABBA, Rita Coolidge, Eagles, all of that stuff. So it was all very melodic
Hmm.
stuff. And I think that's what always sort of stuck in my head. I became a sucker for a song, whatever the genre, as long as it had a good melody. That was the thing for me.
Hmm.
Whereas my dad on the other side, he was listening to things like Thin Lizzy and Horslips and all of these great Irish rock groups. So there was this sort of yin and yang between the two. But that's how I started. But then, of course, and it's weird. You should actually say it, Michael, because we were watching a thing on TV the other night, and it was music of the '80s, and I think it was Nick Kershaw said it, and it was something I've long said. It was just the music of the '80s, and this is purely my opinion. Um, no two groups sounded like each other. So like Soft Cell didn't sound like Duran Duran, and Aha didn't
Hmm.
sound like Eurythmics, and they all did their thing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they just had their really melodic value. Don't bore us, get to the chorus, that kind of thing. And that was a huge that had a huge impact on me as well.
I completely agree with that. I think 80s music, and it's probably a little bit of a bias for me. I'm a few years older than you, and my high school years were the 80s, and I think that music was a little bit all over the map, and I think especially in this country, largely MTV was responsible for that because they were just playing whatever videos they had to start with, and they would play an Iron Maiden, and then they would play a Gary Newman Cars and that kind of thing. So it was a little bit all over the place. Coming out of the '70s, I first became aware of your music in 2006 when you were with Darwin's Radio. In fact, I saw you in 2007 at the Rites of Spring Festival.
Okay, you were
Um,
there. Wow.
I was there.
Wow.
That was my first prog rock festival. So there, thank you for being there and playing. Um, but you guys had two really solid albums with Darwin's Radio, Eyes of the World and Template for a Generation. What happened to Darwin's Radio?
Um, I, I think it was just a combination of things. I think I'd got to a point where I either really wanted to do it, or hey, let's not bother. And we just done Template for a Generation, and off the back of that album, oh no, was it before that? No, actually, it was before that. It was the first album. Um, IQ became interested in Mark as a potential new keyboard player. I'd been talking to Jem Godfrey about potentially doing some project with him or whatever. And by the time Template came out, I was like, guys, come on, let's really go and do this. We played a great festival in the US at the Rite of Spring. Feedback was really good. And I kind of felt, okay, well, let's go all in. Let's really, really do this. And I just kind of felt, and again, in my opinion, I just kind of felt that the guys they didn't want to do that. They were happy to play Saturday night somewhere or do that. And I thought, no, we've got some really great material here. There's a bit of a buzz happening. Let's just get out there and do this.
Mm-hmm.
And it just wasn't happening. And then by that time, I just recorded with Frost, and then that was a busy band. So I was like, hey, I'm doing this. Yeah, that's kind of what happened.
Yeah, so yeah, it sounds like you were ready to take that next step musically, and everybody else was happy to have their day jobs and just they
Yeah.
they wanted a paycheck, and you wanted to go move forward,
Yeah.
I guess. Um, let's talk about Frost a little bit. How did you and Jem hook up, and how did you become a member of Frost for the Experiments in Mass Appeal album, and then you were at Rozfest again because you had a live album from that, the Philadelphia Experiment.
Yeah. I sort of, I drove him crazy, I think. But basically what had happened was 2006, Eyes of the World was out. And we at the time were just on every internet forum trying to plug the fact that, hey, we're a new band, we've got an album out. And, a few places I'd seen some comments from this guy called Jem Godfrey. I didn't know who he was. And he said, really like this album, love the singing, blah, blah, blah. And Mark actually said to me, you know who this guy is, don't you? And I was like, no. And then he explained. I thought, wow, this is absolutely fantastic. So I was like straight on there, hey man, thanks so much for all of the great, feedback. Really appreciate it. That's fantastic. And they were doing a show down in London. I think it was December 2006 from memory, because I'm pretty sure it was the run up to Christmas. And Flower Kings were the support act. So I thought, and the band was splitting up. So they'd done this album, they'd done some gigs in Europe, they'd come back, and Jem was like, okay, this is the end of Frost. I thought, oh, what a shame. I'm going to go and see them then before they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to London. They did their support thing. We went out to the bar afterwards and getting a drink, and then the band were there. It was John, the other John, Andy, and Jem, and I thought, I've got to go up and say hello. So I walked up and said, hey, Jem, I'm Dec from Darwin's Radio. Just wanted to say thanks for all the kind words. He says, oh no, we need to have a chat. I'm doing this project called Dear Dead Days. Would you be interested in doing something on it? I'm like, yeah, 100%. Just tell me when. It was the days of MySpace, actually.
Yeah.
On the page, it was like Jem Godfrey, and I remember I signed in and had a look one day, and it was Jem Godfrey, Dec Burke. was like, oh, this is going to be really cool. And a few days went, Andy Edwards, and all eventually it was all of the Frost guys, but with me. And I was like, right, so this is going to be Frost again, but with me involved.
Yeah, right.
So then the demos for the new album started to come around, and I thought, this is just amazing music. And predominantly my role in the group was as a singer, which I was maybe a little bit uncomfortable about. As I've always been someone, I classify myself as a guitar player that sings rather than being a singer that plays guitar.
Okay.
So but it was an opportunity to be part of it. So went down, and the recording process for the whole thing was such great fun. I don't think I've ever laughed so much in my whole life. We'd a week booked out to do the vocals, and I think we'd done them in about 2.5 days. And then I did a few little electric guitar bits and some acoustic guitars, and then we just went to the pub. That's my memory of that album. And then we went out and we gigged. So yeah, that's sort of long story. That's how that came to be.
Yeah. So Dear Dead Days was he initially thought that was the project name. It ended up becoming my favorite song on that album. It's a tremendous song.
Oh, amazing. Jem he's a gifted songwriter, but then he's got all of the producer sensibilities as well. It's like he knows how something should sound, and he can do that with all of the instruments. And it's, I've been in the studio watching him work, and it's just, the speed is just incredible. No, actually that needs that done. It's like, wow, amazing. So yeah.
And Jem's the thing about Jem too is that he's got this ability, and he's running some pretty high circles, and then he wanted to do the kind of music that he loved, and it's not a high selling popular type of music, but he said, this is what I want to do, and he went and did it.
Yeah, and did an amazing job with it. I think it really shook up the whole prog fraternity. I guess it is quite a small pool, and then you've got all of these almost sub-genres within prog, and I think he had a vision for what he felt. I'm putting words in his mouth here. What he thought it should be, and he did it, and he did it with aplomb. So it's amazing.
So Frost has had some releases since then. What were you just busy working on your own stuff, or were you just not interested in continuing with Frost as just primarily a singer? What happened there?
Okay, so it was we'd done some support shows with Dream Theater, and then after that there was the live album, and then we did what's the song? The Dividing Line as a studio track on that album. And I think at the time I just I felt that the dynamic with Frost was very much between Jem and John, and that was the group, it's Jem's baby. And as great as it was to be part of it, I kind of wanted to just take a run and see, look, can I do this me, by myself? Can I just do it and take a run up the flagpole and see if it works or not? And I guess I kind of had to do that. And I think at the time as well, Jem wanted to continue with the group as a four-piece, more of him handling vocals, John handling vocals, and there wasn't a need for a second guitarist. So I think all of that came to a point, and it was in a period where Frost was quite inactive. There wasn't, that album had happened, but I don't think there were many gigs. There was a period of time where things weren't going on, and it kind of just faded away. And I went and did, and when Jem started back up, he got back in. And then, of course, John Jarrett wasn't involved anymore. Andy had gone by then as well. So they continued doing that, and I went and did my thing. So it was every now and again I'll get an email or speak to Jem online, but it's busy people just doing different things. But it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing to be part of it.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, your first solo album, Destroy All Monsters, was one of my favorite albums that year. It was. Tell me a little bit about how that came about in terms of, like, when you started to record this, it had to be kind of a little bit daunting to say I'm going to go do my first solo album.
Yeah. Yeah. And, in hindsight, I think it was, I didn't know very much about recording. I bought the stuff, I tried to do it myself. I think there's some great songs on there, but I was never happy with the mix and how it came to pass.
Hmm.
So it's funnily enough, I'm actually in the process now of reimagining a lot of those songs, and I'm actually going to share some bits online, work in progress. Not like, okay, here's the finished thing. Oh,
Yeah.
here's where I've got to today with this. Stick it on, see what people think about it, and get back to do it. So yeah, it was very very daunting. And I don't think it was until the second album where the guys from Carpentry in Sweden were saying, "Hey, look, do you need some help with the next one? What songs have you got?" And I said, "Well, to be honest, I haven't got a lot. I've got 3 or 4." And Stefan contacted me and just said, "Look, get some songs together that you would classify to be an album and send them to me, and I'll start producing it," which is what happened, and that's how the second album came to be.
Hmm.
So yeah, sorry, I've digressed from your original question.
No, that's fine. It's fine. I was just curious, as to, when you have been in a band situation for a while and then you go out and do your first solo album, there's always has to be some kind of,
Yeah.
how am I going to do this kind of,
Oh,
thing.
absolutely, absolutely. It was, yeah, fear factor times 100.
Yeah. So, um, let's take a walk through this Life in Two Dimensions album's brand new album. You produced it, so obviously you must have learned something from doing your first three albums.
Yes, yes, yeah. I think with the first three, I think there's a progression, and I kind of got to the point with Book of Secrets where I really just wanted to take a hold of it and say, look, in my mind, this is how I'm hearing it, and this is how I want it to sound. And I needed that outside ear mixer that could say, okay, well, tell me what you're hearing, and I'll realize it for you. And that's what I found with Robin. I got chatting to him quite by chance actually online, and he said, look, I've got a little label as well. Get on board with me. I'll do the mixing for you. You tell me what your vision is for it. How are you hearing it? And the album started, funnily enough, because I play with a Dutch group called Dilemma.
Hmm.
They'd come over from Holland at the beginning of 2020, so just before lockdown had kicked in. And we'd done a couple of weeks here, we wrote the new Dilemma album at my studio here. And then the guys went away, and I'd sort of torn my studio apart and set it up in such a way that, okay, we can have the drums over there and the keyboards there, and so it was all set up. And I thought, well, I'm still kind of feeling, inspired to write music. So I kind of left things the way they were, and I assumed the keyboard guy over here to do that bit, and then I was the guitar player, and just started writing, and the songs started coming. And at the same time, I was chatting to Scott Hyam, and he said, "Oh, if you've got any ideas, send them over and see what you. I'll give you some feedback." And he loved the music, so it was like, well, okay, I need a drummer. And he was great. He was so upbeat, enthusiastic, wanting us to do a great album. So it was great having Scott as another fresh pair of ears. So I basically demoed everything here to a point where I thought, okay, that's kind of what I would like. And then I sent all the files to Robin, and he started to mix it, and then we were back and forth on the music stuff. But then I guess from a lyrical kind of point of view, the title track came along right at the end. So I had all the music, and I kind of felt the album needs another song. It didn't feel complete. And the melody just came to me one morning, and I was putting the demo down, and as I'm doing scat vocals, it was la 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 la, this is where the vocal will be. The line "Life in Two Dimensions" came out just as a life, and I was like, whoa, that's kind of cool, because it kind of sums up how things are in the world right now, where you've got, we still need to get on and do what we need to do, but there's this whole horrible thing happening in the world, and people are, just, it's not very nice. So it kind of felt like that people were living in two different dimensions to everything, and how kind of put myself in the driving seat of, okay, well, how would our character feel about all of this? And it was the guy who's, wake up at the start of the day, my mind's going, how do I feel about all of this, and how things unravel. And thematically, that's kind of in other songs across the album. But then, there's other things that drive me bananas, like just endless advertising. I mean, I swear to God, I go and make a cup of coffee and it's like, Dec, making a cup of coffee, sponsored by Nescafe. And like, it's enough. We get it. It's, it's just advertising gone mad. So that's a pet peeve of mine. So I thought I'd go write a song about that. At the tail end of 2019, I lost my dad. So it was a really horrible period. And then, of course, my mum.
Sorry to hear that.
Thanks, Michael. My mum was all of a sudden living by herself. And because of lockdown, I couldn't go over and give her a hug. So that was on my mind. So Fly with Broken Wings is about that. Okay. So all of these different themes.
Yeah, you mentioned that you talked about the lockdown a little bit. How much of this album was written and recorded during that lockdown period? It was all of it?
All of it, yeah. So I think I started, would have been probably about March 2020, and then it was written and done by, I'd say, end of July, early August. And I had all the bits, and then it was like from August to maybe September, putting it all together. And then who am I going to get to play on it, and contacting musicians. And then this time I was talking to Robin at the end of 2020. And then he started to mix it beginning of February 21. And then we needed to get it ready for there's certain slots where you would release an album. So we were trying to think, okay, where it's going to be best placed, and it was like, well, it's going to be September. I was like, oh, really? So like the album was like done for months, and I'm like, I want to play this for people, and I can't play it.
Yeah, that would be the worst. I mean, Tom Petty said the waiting is the hardest part, right? So
yeah, 100%.
Let's tell people who you're talking about. So Robin Armstrong is from Gravity Dream. He mixed and mastered this. You wrote all the songs. Artwork was done by Robin Z. You did electric and acoustic guitars, keyboards, vocals, drum programming on the song Energy. Scott Hyam, who people will know from Pendragon, I believe he was in time with Pendragon. He did the drumming and percussion. Rainier Siemens on bass, Guillermo Aguiar on bass, on trapdoor, and cello on This Time. Yeah. Christopher Gildenlow did bass on a couple of songs. I have to tell you, I think it's Steely Dan is the only other band I know that uses this many bass players on an album.
It's really odd actually how that came to be, because Gillenlow was going to do bass on the album full stop, and because of commitments he couldn't. But by then he'd done like the cello on This Time, and he'd done trapdoor, which I thought that's just amazing. We've got to keep that. And then Rainier contacted me and said, Dec, look, if you need help with bass playing, I'm here. And I'm like, okay, well, I need someone to do the bass. And then Chris was working on his album, and he said, oh, I'd love to hear some of your demos from the new album. So I was sending them over. He goes, oh, I can imagine a great bass line on this. I was like, okay, well, can you send me? And what he'd sent on some of the songs, that's exactly what that needs. So in the end, there was 3 bass players, and I was like,
wow,
you intended to have one.
Robin Z did the piano intro to Paper Fortress.
Yeah,
beautiful piano intro to that song. And did Robin Armstrong also do some backing vocals on this?
Yeah, apparently so. I mean, all the stuff went across, and he's a producer in his own right with what he does with Cosmograph. Mm-hmm. So he came back to me with some of the songs and said, Dec, I was hearing this on there. What do you think? And I was like, sounds great. Keep it. There's no point in me redoing it. So I said, brilliant. Keep it in there.
Yeah. Are all the other harmonies yours?
All the vocals, I believe, are me. Yeah. Okay. I think Robin may have done 1 or 2 bits, but I'm struggling to hear it, but I think it's just me.
Okay. So it's funny your story about life in two dimensions, because I don't know how many times I've heard stories about musicians who said, we need one more song for the album. And then they come up with something and it ends up being the best thing on the album. And you obviously felt strongly about this, at least the phrase, because you named the album after it.
Yeah, yeah, it's really peculiar. It's because what happens is, what I find anyway, is that you have a collection of songs and you listen back to them and you go, okay, right, is this a group of songs that will sit together? Because sometimes you'll write songs and you go, okay, that's so different to that. Like, I can't see how that would fit. So then you'll kind of, maybe I'll keep that for something else, and you keep writing. But the group of songs, I felt, strung together quite well, but I needed something that, and I had the sort of running order in mind, but I needed something was that kapow opening track,
Yeah.
and I didn't feel it was there yet. I just, it just, well, the melody just came along, and I thought, yeah, okay, that's it.
Yeah. So this Life in Two Dimensions is a great opener because it's got that energetic opening. It gets you going. The riff
Cool.
backed by it's like a subtle keyboard underneath this guitar riff. It makes it pop even more,
Yeah.
and it's a tremendous opener. And then you go into Emergency, which has this kind of otherworldly keyboard sound in the intro. Has a bit of an electronic sheen to it almost. And tell me about the guitar solo with the harmony. Did you play that? Is that an effect? Did you play two different solos on top of each other? Just in one with higher than the other.
Yeah. So I haven't got a harmonizer, so I just double tracked it, and then sometimes it's the melody suggests something to you, and I guess we were talking earlier about Thin Lizzy, that sort of stuff is something that's long sat with me, that two guitar melody thing, and we did it for a time with Frost as well, between myself and John, where you do the lead lines together. So yeah, that's happened quite a bit on this album. I think actually more than any of the albums I've done before, there's a lot of doubled up. Some more obvious than others. Others you might not necessarily think it, but there's others like, yeah, well, that's definitely, there's two there.
Yeah. Everybody did all of this in their home studios?
Everything except for the drums. So Scott recorded the drums at Thin Ice. So that's Carl Groom's studio. So Carl from Threshold, Clive Nolan. I think it's their studio that they run together. So Scott went down and recorded it there. Carl's an old friend, and he's got a fantastic ear for how things should sound.
Yeah, he does.
Because of the lockdown, I couldn't go down there. So it was like Scott went down and recorded it with Carl, just so that there wasn't too many bodies in the room.
Yeah.
But he knocked it out of the park. Absolutely amazing drumming.
Yeah, great drummer. So Sister X has a great sing-along chorus, got some guitar crunch into it, and a killer solo. I wanted to kind of pick your brain on guitar soloing, because some of these songs have 2 or even 3 guitar solos in them. Do you just build room in for these solos, or is it something that you've put down and you kind of have been sort of just jamming on your own, and you think, I got to put this somewhere? How do you construct a song with the solos in there?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was thinking with this album, that I didn't think the whole, like so many people, that the whole COVID thing would drag on for so long. So while I was writing this, I was imagining, okay, well, live, how is it going to be? And I find with a lot of times when I get out, I feel very tethered to the microphone, that I'm in one spot.
Yeah.
And I was trying to imagine, okay, well, when we go back out and play again, it would be great that I'm just not always there doing the bad dad dance. Get away from the mic and do a bit. And a couple of reasons to do that would be if you've got a solo bit to sort of interact, with the other musicians and for the crowd. But I think as well with a lot of the songs on the album, there's a real sort of energy, upbeat feel to them, and it kind of felt to me, you know, let's get a great chorus in there, let's get a cool guitar solo, maybe another outro solo, and maybe, you know, just to keep that, you know, up tempo, because as much as the themes maybe for the album in some songs are even a little somber, the energy of the music counteracts that. And I was trying to think, okay, well then when we present that on the stage, how is that going to look and whatever. So I wanted it to be, you know, when you look at it, there's a bit more movement rather than one guy stood there. So that's kind of the reason why.
Yeah. It's interesting that you just talked about upbeat, and you just talked about being able to play live, and now we're going to talk about a song that's a ballad that's got cello in it, and it's not an upbeat song this time, which is still, I think, for me, one of the album highlights. How do you write a song and then think, this needs cello?
Well, I mean, I would love to take the credit for that, because it is just an astounding bit of playing, and the melody is just, you know, as a melody lover, it's amazing. And I sent the song to, he goes by the name Ghost, so we call him Ghost.
Okay.
And I sent him that, and he sent that back, and I was just jaw on the floor. I just thought, that is just the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. And he came up with that, and I think there's a couple, 2 or 3 melodies intertwining with it all.
Mm-hmm.
And he just came up with that and sent it back, and I was just like, this is amazing. We're keeping that. That's going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's him 100%. You know, and I had to say it on the credits as well. It's like, you know, that was performed and written by him. You know, he's done that.
When you put something like that on your album, though, how much do you worry? We can't play this live, or is it gonna? Am I gonna have to take an extra person on the, you know, out with us, that kind of thing?
Yeah, that is a really good question. I'm still wondering what to do about that. You know, when we go out and do it, we might have to just, I don't know. I'm still playing around with it in my head. How does that happen?
You might have to strip it down or something.
Perhaps.
Yeah. You know, this goes right into, you know, you come out of this time, and I love the contrast here with the running order. You've got Sunlight come next, which is, it's a rocker. It has almost a Middle Eastern flavor to the chorus and to some of the music in it. And I wondered what you were listening to, what was inspiring you at the time.
Well, I teach guitar to get me by. And with some students, they're very interested in theory and modal approaches to stuff. And I think at that point I was teaching somebody the modes, and he was quite interested in the Phrygian mode, which has got that sort of Eastern quality to it, and he was getting to grips with that. And we'd done a few lessons concentrating on that, and I think that kind of stuck in my head. And then when the riff came up, I was hearing that would fit with it. So total accident.
Fair enough. I don't want to go through every track by track, but I did want to point out "Fly with Broken Wings." It's stylistically, this song stands a little bit apart from all the other songs, and you've already touched on the, you know, sort of what went into that thematically. The verses are sort of a ballad set over, like, it's what sounds like a kind of an R&B beat.
Yeah.
And I was wondering too what you were influenced by, you know, with regard to that.
These are really great observations, Michael. It's almost like you were here. That's a fantastic question. I'm really glad you asked that. There's an English group called Massive Attack.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you're aware of them.
Yeah.
But they did this song where it had that sort of feel to the music of it. And I wrote that song on piano. And it was just a ding, ding, ding. And I wanted to keep the piano so basic, like no embellishments, just chord to chord, really straightforward. And that sort of beat just suggested itself. So when I sent the song to Scott to you know, what do you think will you know, rhythm wise on this, I had like a really bad programmed drum beat to it to say this is the kind of thing. And he came back with exactly what I was thinking about from that Massive Attack song, and it fitted in with it. So it's like, yeah, that's perfect. And for the verses on that, it's more like, it's almost like it's like a prayer almost. It's every verse is like, help me,
Mm-hmm.
and then every line is help me,
Yeah.
and so on. So it did fit with that. It was almost like what's that Porcupine Tree song? Collapse the Earth.
Oh
That
yeah,
one off.
collapse the light into Earth.
Where it just like builds and builds and builds and builds. I'd love that. That was just so that kind of influence is in there
Yeah.
in its own little way. Yeah.
Lyrically, you talked about the help me, and I wondered too, are the lyrics on this album indicative of your mindset during the last year, or were you trying to get in more of a metaphorical space where you're trying to be every man, or was it a combination of the two?
It was very much a combination of the two. It was an incredibly hard year for me, and hey, who didn't have a hard year? It was difficult. Hey, we're in this situation now. Okay, right. So there is an element of that in it, without a doubt. Personally, I had a lot of stuff to contend with that was in your face, and it wasn't nice. But then at the same time, I wanted to have songs where it was like I was writing from the point of view of a character. Like Life in Two Dimensions is,
Mm-hmm.
it's a notional person. Trapdoor is the story of a kid who wants to, be more than just, he goes to school, and when he leaves, he works at the factory, and that's what he does. He wants to be something else. So, I'm writing that from the viewpoint of, okay, well, what would his journey be like? So yeah, it's absolutely, it's a meld of story writing and how I was feeling.
Okay, yeah, because when I'm listening to the lyrics and I'm thinking, it sounds like I really would like to give Dec a hug and tell him everything's going to be all right because he sounds like he's had a tough time.
Yeah.
Paper Fortress, we talked about the beautiful piano intro. Did that idea originate with Robin? Did you ask for that? How did that come about?
Yeah, I did, and he wrote that. I said, "You've got free reign." I said, "We need like a beautiful, about a minute long piano intro into this," because I was here because the song just comes straight in, and I just felt that was a little bit too sudden, and it needed that sort of floating into it, and then bang. And he said, "What is?" I said, "You just have a think and tell me what you like." And he'd done a few pieces, and he was putting them together, and he sent me what ended up on the album cross first. He said, "Okay, I've got this one," and as he was going to send me the others, like, "That's it. That's exactly what I had in my mind." And a few other bits he had as well were absolutely beautiful, but this, it spoke. That's what needed to be on there. So yeah, he completely came up with that. He went to his friend's studio in Amsterdam and recorded it there on a beautiful piano, and sent it across. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. There's some crunchy guitars in here with, again, this is one of those songs I was talking about before. I counted at least, what, 3 solos in there, and the second one is this really soaring thing that's just really great. And then the ending has this layering of guitar parts. It sounds like you've got electric and acoustic both going at the end of that. Is that in there?
On which song is this?
On Paper Fortress at the end?
On Paper Fortress, yes, absolutely, yes. It's something I'll always do with clean guitars. Is I'll play it on acoustic, and then I'll do a left and right on an electric guitar, and then in the box, then add in chorus and delay. So you have like the dry, clean acoustic, which is sort of pushed up the front, and then you bring in the electric left and right that sort of hugs it. And it gives it this sort of big 3D sound, and it's like sometimes you're not sure, is it that acoustic, is that electric, what am I supposed to be, but it comes across as like one thing.
Yeah, it's I think that worked really well for you. You saved the 2 longest songs for the last 2 songs on the album. You just had to show people you're still a progressive rock guy. Gotta have
Yeah.
couple longer songs. The last one's almost 10 minutes long, but I have to tell you, and this is a big compliment when you hear this, a 10-minute song that doesn't feel like it lasts 10 minutes.
Cool.
That's
Thanks.
yeah.
Thanks.
It's really, I think a testament. Anytime you can put down a 10-minute song that you go, wait, that's 10 minutes already? I
Yeah.
think that's a good sign that it's holding your attention and keeping it for the full time of the song.
I'm blaming Spock's Beard for that one, and Rush as well. It's very heavily Rush influenced. But I saw Spock's Beard in London once, and actually Mark took me down. He said, "You got to see this band. They're just incredible." And I felt that with their show. It was like, these are long songs, clearly, but they're not. It didn't feel like I was stood there for 15 minutes listening to this.
Yeah.
How do you do that? That's brilliant.
So was this during Neil Morse was still in the band?
Well, actually, I saw Neil with the band in Nottingham. It must have been about 99, 2000. They were supporting Dream Theater on the Scenes from Memory album, and that was the last tour I think he did with Spock's. And then the next time I saw them, it was Nick's first outing as the singer, and he did an amazing job with that. Yeah. So
Nick
I've seen both incarnations. Yeah.
Nick is now with Big Big Train. It's just a tremendous band, also. You mentioned Rush. You mentioned Spock's Beard. I would like to talk a little bit more about your musical influences, because you are, your music is often filed under progressive rock, but you have, I think, a fresh, modern approach to progressive rock. So who are some of the people who influence you in terms of your sound?
I think fundamentally it's the melody aspect. I like it to be melodic, and I think a lot of that probably comes from 80s influences, and you can probably hear that in the music. I make no apology. Some of the songs do sound a bit 80s. I don't care. That's what it is. So there is that element in there as well. But then at the same time, there's a lot of really great new bands out. There's a Danish group that I just can't get enough of right now. They're called Vola, and super, super heavy bands. You need, if you've not heard them, Michael, you really need to check these guys out. And but super melodic as well. So I hear stuff like that, and that's tremendously inspiring. I love to hear stuff like that. But I've got so many musician friends, and we're always talking and going, "Have you seen, or have you heard such and such?" And you're sending stuff along, and oftentimes you think afterwards, I can't even remember what that band was, but the germ, the seed of what they stand for sort of sticks in your head as a writer, and you kind of remember that, and you kind of think, God, who's that band? And you forget. But then others will stick in your mind more readily. But certainly love groups like Rush, Dream Theater were a big influence. Maybe a few years back, maybe not so much these days. Frost was an influence very much. I love what Jem was and still is doing with the music. It's fantastic. And then I love old groups like Depeche Mode, stuff like that. The way that they produce come at something that's a little bit more electronic, but it's still got the rocks. If you've seen any of the live stuff, they've got the live drummer with them. But it's still got the electronic feel. So it's almost like little bits of everything that, I like that aspect, and I kind of gather it all together, and it ferments.
Yeah. It becomes Dec Burke. I always am interested in people who create music, in their listening habits, and it sounds like you still at least go to shows. Do you have a record collection? Do you listen to CDs? Do you listen on the streaming services? How do you consume music?
Actually, that's just a really good question again, because I was talking to some friends about this recently, and I think the way that people do consume music these days is it's like a step change in what was. And I'm very much of the old school where I love the product. I love to, like, with a vinyl, open it and look at it and smell it and see the artwork and where what's the studio? Oh, look at that. I love all of that. And even with a CD, I'll sit there and just soak up all of that aspect of it. I don't have a Spotify account. Someone made one for me, and I think the label put my stuff on there, but I don't get it, and I certainly don't subscribe to it. But I'm definitely more of the old school where, I believe that, a band go in the studio, they make an album, you go and you buy it. You don't go online and get it for free.
Yeah.
It's my opinion, and I'm sure people will shoot me down for saying it, but it's just I kind of think, if you went to a restaurant and you had a great meal, you have to pay for it. If you didn't pay for it, you'd go to jail. It feels the same way with music. It's fair's fair.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm like you. I'm a physical media guy. I have my CD collection. You see some of them back here. I've got my LPs. I think that a lot of people do the streaming services out of convenience. You can carry around your phone with you, and then you have every song ever written. And I do have a Spotify subscription. I bought the premium thing, and I pay every month because I'm hopeful that some small part of that at least will reach the artists, even though it should be a larger cut. Nobody from Spotify has ever asked me. I'm certainly willing to pay more to make sure that all of the people I play get more, but they don't distribute it properly. They don't distribute enough of it. And it's just lining someone's pockets. It's not the creator of the music's pockets. So that part is upsetting. But this day and age, I'm just trying to do whatever I can, even if that's a small thing. I will say Darwin's radio not being on there is a bummer. But then I have it ripped on my computer anyway, so I just put it on my phone. I can listen to it out of my phone anyway. So.
Cool. That's cool.
So where can people get your album? I noticed that it's available to buy digitally on Amazon here in the US, but I think you have to order from Burning Shed or from the label, Gravity Dream Music. Is it available anywhere else?
I believe there's a number of distributors in Europe for people in Europe, but for the US, I think it is. If you want a physical copy, I think it is just from them. Mm-hmm. And as you said, digitally, it's available on Amazon. Let me check that actually, Michael. And if it's otherwise, I'll send you a text and let you know. But I think that's the way it is.
Is this ever going to be available on vinyl?
I think
it's expensive.
It is. It's so expensive. And I did it with one of my old albums. And I think if the CD sells enough, we can justify it. But it's a big outlay. And to be honest, I am a really, really small fish in a big pond. It's very hard to compete with some of the bigger guys who they can go out there, can do the bigger shows, and they know they're going to sell X amount of merch. I guess at my level, it's very, very difficult to justify it. I wouldn't want to be stuck with the stock.
Yeah. Dec, you don't have an actual an artist website, right? It's just through, you got a Facebook and stuff.
Yeah, I need to put I did have a website, and I took it down because I was using the website predominantly for my teaching. And I kind of got to a stage with word of mouth where I live that I kind of didn't need it. But then I guess foolishly I took it down. But then there's the aspect of people trying to find out who you are, that they can't find you. If they're not on Facebook, then they don't find you. So I'm planning about putting a new site together, but at the moment I don't. Whoops.
Yeah, that's fine. Things are loosening up a little bit as far as restrictions. Are you going to be able to tour? Do you have a band ready to go out with you?
Yeah, well, Dilemma, the the Dutch group that I play with, we've got 2 gigs scheduled for April next year. One in Holland, one in Germany. And I'm kind of waiting to see how that goes, because both of these have already been delayed twice.
Yeah.
So I want to see what the lay of the land looks like with those and how that goes off. And then it'll give me an idea of what to do with this. But the plan is, if I can get out, I'm going to try and piggyback with another group. So go out and look, you know, hopefully the people that follow me will come along, and hopefully the people that follow you will come along, and between us we can, you know, sort of do it that way to make it worthwhile. Because, you know, I have done 2 gigs recently. Where are we now? October. Yeah, I've done 2 gigs this month, just as supporting a friend of mine. But I did that singing and playing guitar with backing tracks for the rest of it, because I said to him, my music doesn't really translate to sitting there with an acoustic guitar. You know, it's some maybe, but not all of it. Yeah. So I kind of did it that way, and that was a sort of testing of the water. And talking to the venues there, they're saying they are starting to see the numbers creep back up. And for what we had come out to see us for those shows, they were saying it was really, really good, but then it was still, you know, half full. So I think there's just going to be a little bit of time yet to see that get back, because it needs to be worthwhile. You know, I'm going to have to hire people to play. I'm going to have to, you know, hire out rehearsal rooms and travel costs and all of that stuff. So it's a big outlay to say, okay, I'm doing these dates because I have to pay for it.
Yeah, no kidding. Anytime you're using your own money, it's something you have to seriously consider.
Yeah, exactly.
Dec Burke, Life in Two Dimensions. This came out in September. I've enjoyed learning about this, the making of this album. I've enjoyed listening to it quite a bit, and I hope it does really well for you. I hope that it sells well, and that people find it. And you know, I wish you the best of luck with it, and I really appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Michael. It's an absolute pleasure, and really nice to talk to you.